we are in a very challenging context where not only the movement of people is restricted worldwide almost, but also the movement of cargo is being impacted by the current situation. It's also a time for countries, for partners, actors across the world to rethink on the way we were managing our logistics and the supply chains. And we are having 3 areas of discussion. We are sharing the ideas with our partners, with our member countries, and this is what we would wish to advance for countries to think about. One is that it's a high time for countries to look at how they can bring in or provide additional and substantial support or efforts in order to invest in the agro-processing, in the processing of our raw products, our raw materials, but also in the conservation. It's very important when we see what is happening here and there that countries that have got a very solid value chain or logistics arrangement in place are countries who are facing, at least on that aspect of making sure that people don't die of hunger. Countries that have got solid and sustainable systems in terms of agro-processing and the like are showing some advanced level of resilience in a situation like this one. So for countries of the Central Corridor region, Africa in general, I think investment or initiatives in the value addition, and power generation, because without power you cannot keep for long the perishable goods and the like. It's an area that really will require a lot of efforts going forward to make sure that not only country across the current crisis easily or in an acceptable way, but also going forward to sustain our production and processing systems. Number 2, in a situation now where you can't have everything you need around you, where you are obliged to still go to your neighboring countries to get this or that, it's also important that we think on how we can enhance our cross-border facilities, especially in terms of trade facilitation, but also in terms of putting in place cross-border markets. We see experiences where countries who have advanced facilities like that, they are getting some comparative advantage, because imagine if drivers or transporters from neighboring country can't come to your country, but goods can still move. Containers can be picked by the borders with their counterparts. So it's really very important that countries look at their respective borders, what kind of commodities or goods are crossing there, and which kind of facilities can be put in place. It's very important. It's high time that countries look at how they can enhance trade, regional trade, cross-border trade, by putting in place facilities at the respective crossing points, the borders, which will allow operators of the other side not necessarily to drive long distances, while this service can be offered by, let's say, operators or drivers from the countries that is exporting. So cross-border facilities need to be looked at, enhanced. They need to be improved so that not only we deal with the current crisis, but also we make sure that our systems are sustainable. And then finally, it's an idea around now how historically, after such moments, people or countries have been thinking on how or where now to process goods, where to get supplied in raw materials. In the last 30 years or more, most production capabilities or facilities were in Europe. but they further shifted to Asia because the costs of production factors in Europe were a bit high, but Asia, China, India, and other countries had invested a lot in their people. They had skilled labor and skilled but also cheap labor, so they could attract now the capital from Europe to Asia. So now the current situation has proved that especially African countries, in our region, East Africa, Central Corridor, we were even importing matches to make fire, very less technology or capital intensive items. Why can't we start to think on how we can manufacture some of the products we were importing so far? And it's possible. We would start with less technological ones. We would partner with the advanced companies out there. They would come here and put in place some facilities here. They would put in place some plants here. And it's just a matter of policymakers, decision makers to provide incentives. You provide incentives. The private sector will do the rest. So it's very important that we don't miss this opportunity. This is an opportunity for Africa, for the region, to think about how we can start manufacturing some of the goods and items we have been importing. The raw material are from our region. We have people, we just need to invest and have skilled labor, cheap labor, the rest will follow. So this is something really we need to think about. We are finalizing a 5-year strategic plan, and in the coming days we'll be sharing and seeing how we can support countries who would wish to develop initiatives in that regard. So in a summary, we are saying it's a crisis, it's a situation very challenging, but that is calling everyone to think about how we have been managing our supply chains. We need to shorten them, we need to sustain them, we need to make sure that our people, our economies are empowered to make sure that we don't lose our production. The perishables are processed, they are kept for long so that the people can at least be assured of having supplies that can last for 3 to 6 months or even more. But also to look at our cross-border facilities. If countries can think at empowering cross-border markets and other facilities that can help to improve cross-border trade in a more sustainable way. And then finally, as I was saying, how countries need to rethink and shorten the supply chains that we've been going through in terms of empowering the private sector, enhancing the private sector, providing additional incentives so that some of the items we have been importing so far can be processed locally. Thank you.